Welcome, Douglas Robbins, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to be talking about a variety of things, but I have you as an author, you're a writer, and you also have this interesting way of thinking where you look between the lines of what society has and how people think. But in your own words, can you tell the people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a writer. I have about a half dozen books out. I'm also a podcaster, a podcast called The Den of Discussion, where basically anything that connects to the human experience. But as a child, it was very interesting because I never really fit in. You're supposed to care about clothing, and you're supposed to get into cliques, and you're supposed to worry about what your wants are in the colleges and all these things, nationalism. I always, religion, I always saw kind of through them. And there's a great divide between society and humanity. Humanity is what we bring into this world. Society is the dogma we started hearing to. And the dogma of society is often not aligned with the humanity of who we are, the greater selves, the greater purpose, interconnectedness, our best self. Society is often about what can you do for something, meaning how do you help a business? How do they extract your worker bee sort of, production? So there's a great divide between what humanity is, that essence, that divine spark, that fulfillment and expression of our true selves, of our hearts, of our spirits. And then, like you said, you have the box of then society, people getting trapped in that group thinking, in the societal thinking. It's a facade, kind of trapped in these things. And I remember as a child learning about Columbus, and I remember thinking like, but weren't there, he found the new world. And it's like, well, but weren't there people living here already? Like, he didn't find anything, he was lost. And so we often give credit to the wrong places and prop them up instead of looking into those deeper truths of who are we really? What are we really trying to do here on this earth? And it simply isn't being a workaround.
It's interesting with the idea of like the dogma and then our true self, right? Where it's like we are pretending, I guess, to be someone different and we're not being our true self. I find that it's just kind of going along with peer acceptance, right? We as people, we want to be accepted in society. I was victim of that in elementary school and high school. And it wasn't until high school where I kind of woke up and I said, you know what, like I don't really care about like these cliques and these groups because after high school, what's going to happen? I'm not going to talk to these people anymore, probably. And it's not that I don't care about them. I just know that what I was going for in my life was going to be different than the path that we're on collectively in high school. I was looking at so much more rather than just a small picture of what high school was. I was looking beyond college even. That just leads me to think like, why are many people so stuck where they say, well, society tells me I have to wear these clothes. I have to have this type of bag. I have to have these social media accounts, and then I have to act appropriately in this way so I can be accepted. Why can't people be more of a trailblazer rather than a conformant?
Well, it's a loaded question, but our society is built upon externals, not internals, not fulfillment. It is built upon capitalism and consumerism. And we're taught from a young age to associate, if you drink Coca-Cola, you're going to feel great. If you wear these jeans, you're going to look great. People will like you. And that obviously plays upon growing up, evolving, becoming a child and a teen, and et cetera. Those are confusing times. Emotions also play on it. Your home life plays upon that. I was lost, to be perfectly honest with you. I had these insights. I didn't know how to hold on to them or what to do with them. And my parents were good folks, but they weren't seekers in that way. And I didn't get what I needed at home. And then you go to school, and the school at that time was really just a, production line, 35 kids in class and just moving you through. Some of the teachers were kind of nasty and belittling. And so you're just a little sponge. You don't know how to hold on to this great love or great passion or great understanding. And so it gets compartmentalized, it gets shoved aside. And, this is where identity is, and, how you see yourself in the world. And I really struggled with myself in the world, in school, didn't really trust school. I never really wanted to excel at it because I didn't trust it. So naturally, you're not going to excel at something you don't trust. And then it's like, well, you got to go to college. You got to get a 40-hour a week job, and you got to get two kids, and you got to get a house with a picket fence. And it's like, no, those things didn't make sense to me. The college didn't even make sense to me because I thought like it was a big game, all of this. And it was a game I was losing. So I didn't really want to play it. So we're not asked to be our best. No one really cares who you are unless you force it upon the world and say, this is who I am, get out of my way kind of thing. But it's very hard as a child and a teen because it's such a confusing time to really honor that, to honor that self, to honor that truth, to honor, that self that's calling to you, because there's so much confusion. You do want to fit in. It's a confusing time. It's a very difficult time. So it's not built into our culture, Michael, to find fulfillment. And is it anyone's fault? Look, so many people are trying to do great things nowadays, trying to help each other, authenticity, help each people move forward, take care of the earth. But 50 years ago, 70 years ago, that wasn't on the forefront. It was survival and war and working at the factory. That was sort of, I'm sure there were people who were trying to expand out, but at the same time, I think people are starting to realize, and even through the pandemic, there's more to life than just making a buck and buying things, because I think people are realizing, even a lot of successful people are realizing, that's not fulfilling me. And so I think we're shifting culturally, but education education is about information and regurgitation. It's not about fulfillment. And most of education is worthless information. It does not help you navigate life. It's great to know about World War II, absolutely. But that doesn't help you deal with debt and or say abuse or healing or emotions or who you truly are. It doesn't help you honor that or hone that. So it's again a conflict between society and humanity, who we truly are and what we're really here for.
I firsthand saw that. I'm a former educator, taught in the schools. Even when I was in school, I saw it. There is a way out where we can make people aware, but it's almost as you can show them the light, but they refuse to see it. They're like, I don't see it. And they just kind of still go down the wrong path. You're literally saying we should be doing this, but they still continue to do the old way. I find it so interesting how some people refuse to see that times are changing, how education or, just looking at the school system, how it is skewed in a way of not helping us as adults. Yes, it is like we do learn some things, right? Math, writing, some critical thinking, right? We learn some things, right? We also get that social aspect of what school is, right? So we can develop properly. Because if we don't get it, we are going to have issues later on. So it's kind of like two evils, where it's like we can go off on our own and seek that fulfillment and find deep meaning in life, but then we might be missing that social aspect, because we don't necessarily need a class of 35 kids to be fulfilled. We don't need it, right?
No. That's not it at all. Kids, well, go ahead, finish your point, and then I'll dive back in.
Because the whole thing of just throwing people into a classroom is conformity. Everyone learns the same education. Everyone is going to be regurgitating the same things, getting the same test. And then that's how they're graded. And that child is going to be unique in the sense of they might not be good at math because that's not how their brain is wired, or they might not be good at English. Me, I was not a good English person. When I was in like second grade, third grade, English just was one of those things I just couldn't grasp. I was really good at math. So come sixth grade, I was like in honors math and algebra, but I was lacking behind in English. And it wasn't until, to be honest, college where I really got a foothold in English. And I said, now I got it. It took that long for me to finally say, all right, I can get my mind going into an English type of mindset and be proficient in writing, reading, all of that. But it took so many years. And school is so structured where we have the curriculum where it's like, you got to do this at this point. And if you don't know this, you're behind and you're inadequate.
Yeah. I don't remember who I was listening to, but they're saying, look, a lot of kids start at the starting line. But if certain things happen to you, bad things happen to you, you're starting behind the starting line. And that's a tougher way to start your adulthood or life. But I'm not saying that, get rid of math and all those kind of things, or that every child, it's not about fulfillment as a child. But what I'm kind of saying it is like, if everyone is learning the same thing, right? And that's kind of what the design of it is, as you're saying, that kind of conformist mentality of everybody learn the same thing and everyone want the same thing. But, for instance, if someone was abused as a child, right? Let's say someone, some horrific event, there's nothing in, and maybe this isn't a place for school, but this is what I'm saying in a little bit where society misses the boat is there's an emotional place and there's the mental space, right? And so we often in school teaches you the mental, the intelligence, and that's great. You absolutely have to hone those skills: communication, socialization, math, learning, history, etc. And that's all great. It's all very important. But at the same time, if you're not developing the EQ or the emotional quotient and you're going into life broken, it doesn't matter what kind of information you have in your brain. Until you heal that broken stuff, you're not going to be doing much in your life. And so I feel like there's some nice opportunities to have just additional classes. Doesn't have to be in replacement of math or something like that. And I'm certainly not saying that. Additional classes on healing, on who you are, on honing yourself, on what is important to you, those kind of things, just honoring the self, honoring the individual. But that's not the design of school, right? And that's not the design of society as a whole for the most part. It's about get through school, go to college, get a good job, pay your bills, be a good taxpayer, that kind of thing. So I'm not saying in replacement of anything. I'm simply saying to honor that a little bit more and to help kids heal, help kids understand, help kids navigate. Because, obviously home is supposed to be the safe space, right? Home is supposed to be where you're encouraged and acknowledged. And quite often that's where you're harmed the most. And then you take that into the world with you. And so to get back to a little bit what I was saying is the humanity part gets trapped, right, with these emotional traumas. And so you're trying to kind of like drive a fancy car with bad gas in the tank or tires that have holes in them. You can't. You're not going to reach your best self if you're damaged and broken. Often what happens is just later in your life, you realize, oh, I have all these issues and I need to deal with them. I'm 50 and I still have issues that I'm trying to kind of heal and get through, right? So I just feel like if we get out in front of it a little bit earlier in education, because education has the opportunity to provide a lot more than it does. And I think nowadays, I live in a small town, and it used to be for me growing up, school was much more about competitiveness. There is more of a nurturing environment now in this school anyway, and I think in smaller schools. So the kids are getting that attention. For instance, my daughter is on the track team. You don't have to try out for it. It's just like, oh, I want to be on track. Okay, you're on track. And that's great. It gives the kids these opportunities to be on a team, interdependence, helping each other. These are important things that also, as we get older, kind of falls by the wayside. Society isn't saying, civic duty and volunteerism is, I think, something we're missing. Because that really helps us all connect and helps us, oh yeah, I really like helping or being connected and whatever. So I think these are other aspects of society that are kind of failing, that we're leaving it on the table, this ability to help each other. And you're doing that and I'm doing that. And that's what, I think a lot of people are trying to get back to or to get to, because that's where we all move forward.
And we definitely open up a can of worms with this topic.
Uh-oh.
Because it is so many directions we can go with this. One of the things that I just keep thinking about, what makes a person see the higher road and not the lesser road, number one. Number two, it's like we know that a child or a young adult is not equipped after they leave high school. We know that, right? They don't know how to balance a checkbook, most likely. They don't know anything about taxes. They might not know how to cook or clean. There's so many things beyond the classroom that they have to understand. In order to live, they have to know these things. And you're right. It starts at home, right? Mom or dad should be teaching them how to cook, clean, be proper members of society, do their taxes, invest, save. All of those things should be done in the home. But we're living right now in a society where mom and dad probably have to go to work, where we have two parents having to work just to make ends meet.
Sure.
And whether you want to say that's inflation, whether that's just the economy or the society we're living in or lifestyle, it could be any of those things. But the fact is, there's not going to be a two-parent household anymore. And I think that's detrimental to children, especially now where maybe fathers don't want to be a part of the picture. I know that's kind of like a conversation in the Black community where a kid will have a mother, but the father won't be in the picture. And that's going to be detrimental to that child because they're not going to have that father figure, that person to look up to. And I will tell you this, whether you believe it or not, a male will seek a male as someone to emulate at some point. It could be an author, it
Yep.
could be a doctor. It doesn't matter. A man is going to reach a certain age where they're going to look at another man, whether good or bad, and replicate it. And that's where in the Black community, not to go too far from our conversation, but in the Black community, where we have a continual basis of people going into gang violence, drugs, because that's what they see around them. And they don't have a father figure to say, we're not going to do that. Because if there was a father figure there that wanted them to be elevated, be better than he was, perhaps he would stop that. And that kid will say, well, I'm going to stop this, right? Because typically a young boy, especially if they have a father, they're going to have some type of figure there until the boy reaches around 15 years old. Then they get a little cocky, maybe they get some muscles and they're like, I can take him. Probably not yet, but it's still that way of thinking, those emotions. There's just so many emotions that happen from when we're younger all the way to teens. And then we are thrown into the world and we don't even know how to handle the world. And we don't even know how to handle our own emotions.
Yeah, and look, I mean, parents are just people, right? And they have their own baggage and struggles, and we look to them as if godlike creatures, as if they have all the answers, and they often don't, and they're often not giving you their best because they don't even have their best. My father was a good man, but he came from probably a pretty damaged childhood himself, and the apple doesn't fall far, the sins of the father, etc. And I looked to him for my self-esteem. I looked to him for my self-confidence, and I felt nothing but neglected and rejected. And so when I went into, you're talking about males will look to males. So I looked through what I thought were his eyes, how he saw me. And it was very negative, very, very bad. And so when I got to school, as I write in something, like I was already broken, because now I had this very low self-esteem because the person that essentially I loved the most and believed in the most, I thought or interpreted as didn't believe in me, that I was a disappointment, that I was, not worthy of love. And so that's how I started navigating life as well. I'm a loser. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve to be lifted up or encouraged because I was rejected, time and time again. And so now you start navigating when you're a kid. This is now my first entry into the world, kindergarten, etc., of low self-esteem. Why would anybody really like me or whatever? I mean, I had friends, played sports, but that was my worldview, was I need to hide myself, because if not, the word, vulnerable is now thrown around, and it's true. But if you are hiding that part of yourself, sure, it's such a counterintuitive self-defense mechanism that the brain has, because you're hiding a part of you, but also you're hiding a part of you, meaning the good parts of you are hidden so people can't see them and you can't experience them either. So parents are just people. And so now if you're leaving that nest, if you will, and into a school system that's not providing these things that we're discussing, well, how are you going to learn them? Honestly, I'm going to be blunt. I mean, I started doing drugs at an early age. It was the only place that I felt safe, that I felt joy, that I could laugh easily. And, nature as well. I found nature at an early age, and that's always sort of been my church and my sanctuary is nature, because there's nobody demanding anything of you in nature. Again, you can be your true self in nature. Why? Because humanity is born from nature. It is not born from society. And so that's where we can get to be these expanded selves and at peace and not have to prove ourselves to anyone or compete with anyone. This is our true essence when we're in nature. So that was my escape. But I mean, drugs were the one thing. Sure, there were obviously negatives, but the times that I could relax, that I could laugh, that I didn't have to be something, it was an outlet, right or wrong. I mean, looking back, I wish I hadn't, but I didn't know how to hold on to the things I loved because the things I loved felt too dangerous and felt like they would be taken away from me.
And now, you have a daughter, and I could just tell from speaking with you before we got on air, and then even now, that you're a good father. You might have not had the best father, and he might have had to learn how to be a man if he didn't have a father. So it's kind of like a damaged structure where it's like one man is learning how to be a father, but he doesn't have anything to go off of. Or if he had a father that was maybe abusive or negative toward him, then it's kind of like, well, what do I think? Do I see my relationship as my kid as supposed to be negative, or do I change that? Right. So when I was, I believe, 7 or 8 years old, I have like a photographic memory where I came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to be an alcoholic. Right. And the reason why I said that was because my father was an alcoholic and he didn't hit us or anything because he got hit as a kid. So he didn't want to hit us. So
Yeah.
he was like, I'm not going to hit my kids. That was basically what he thought about. And he didn't have a father growing up either. So he just had his mother. He was a bad boy. So he would go be in gangs, get in fights, all that stuff. But one of the things that he prided himself was he says that I'm going to be there for my kids. So even though he didn't know how to be a father, he was still there, even though he had all of those, I guess, negative attributes. And as a kid, I saw those things and I saw that he was a good man and he did his best to not like put it in front of us, like drink in front of us or smoke in front of us. It was kind of like the backdoor stuff, but we can see it, right? We see it. And I just told myself that I'm not going to be an alcoholic when I grow up. I'm 7, 8 years old. Like, why in the heck am I thinking about that and not so much of, well, dad's doing it. I guess this is what I should be doing. Why was I thinking in that manner of I don't want to be an alcoholic rather than, oh, this is what my dad does. It must be what men do, right? Being
Yeah.
being alcoholic. I think just looking at it, I mean, there's so many avenues that my brain could have went down, but I think I saw the negative side more than the positive side. I was looking at
Yeah.
how destructive it was rather than how uplifting it was. I guess it's just mindset of a kid where it's like, do you see the glass as half full or half empty? And everyone has it at some point. What gets us to that point? That's maybe a mystery. I do have a good theory on it. And I think if you surround yourself with people who are caring and loving, that can give you a more positive outlook on how you want to view life in the future. So I had a great grandmother. All my grandmothers were the sweetest, and they would teach us to be kind, to be loving, caring. And so we had that type of nurturing and caring, which helped us to see in a more positive light. And I mean, all of us came out good. So my brother, he's older than me, my sister's younger than me. We all have businesses. How did that happen growing up in the ghetto? I don't know. And the only way I can think that is a possibility is our upbringing. We had people who cared for us, people who loved and nurtured us. And I know it might not be in the household in everyone's household because stress is going to be prominent. And when you're stressed, you might not be thinking about love. You're just thinking about survival. Like, how am I going to put a roof over my kid's head? How am I going to put food in their belly? You're just trying to survive, make it day to day. And then that kid is trying to find that love, that affection, that nurturing, that emotional bond that they desperately need and they seek. So, yes, it takes a family, and it doesn't have to be blood, a family to raise a child. And if you have someone who's more loving and affectionate, let them be more loving and affectionate because that kid needs that. And then that kid knows that, hey, I'm looking for love, I'm seeking love. They can go to this person. If they're looking for some type of guidance or a heavy hand, they might go to this person, right? Because they understand who gives what. Kids are extremely intelligent when it comes to that. For example, let's say you can't watch TV, but your wife says, yes, they can watch TV. things like that. So they're not going to go to you anymore to ask if they can watch TV. They're going to go to
Of course.
mom. And so they're extremely intelligent with that. And what I think school can offer them is if they have good teachers. And I'm not saying all teachers are bad, definitely not saying. Most of the teachers, I would say 95% of teachers that I've worked with in my districts that I've worked are amazing. They have been amazing. They love the kids just like they were their own. Wouldn't change them. But then at the same time, they're getting piled with assessments, piled with data that they have to bring to the district, to the meetings and things like that. They don't have time. They don't have time. And now they're stressed, they're overburdened, and they can't do their job efficiently. And now a kid is going up to them saying, "Hey, I'm not getting love at home. Can I get it here in the classroom?" And the teacher's like, I'm too busy for that. So it's kind of like a compounding effect where there's so many hats that need to be worn, but there's not enough people to wear them.
Yeah, and to get back to a couple of things before we move on, is my father also made a decision when he was 12. I remember him saying to me, "I'm not going to be like my mother," because she was a very belittling, nasty woman, very degrading to people. But like your father was obviously a good man and obviously cared. He was doing the best he could and obviously raised you guys well. And by hiding this stuff, he was essentially saying to don't be like me. He's not saying, "Hey, buddy, here's a drink," because he certainly could have,
Yeah. He did that
right?
once.
Huh?
He did that once. Yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But like he's saying, don't be like me with this. I'm going to hide this. I haven't been able to get rid of it myself. So I'm going to hide it over here from you guys.
Mhm.
But clearly he knew what he wanted to be and he was doing the best he could. That's a testament to who he really was. But regarding teachers, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying in the given or in the current situation of our education system, give more to teachers. Like they already have so much to do. I know several of them locally, and they don't have any more capacity for anything. But I'm saying in general, like that's probably the best environment for kids to get whatever as individuals, right? I'm not saying as it stands now,
Mhm.
just throw more at teachers for them to do. And truth be told, a lot of teachers aren't skilled in this. They don't have the education in this. They don't have the awareness or mindset of this. So I'm just saying, like, in general, we can make school more than it is. We can make it better than it is to create adults who are ready and prepared to navigate the world, investing,
Mhm.
debt, healing emotions, all those kind of things. What do you really care about? What is your essence? All those type of things. So that's what I'm saying education can do, or some other aspects of society. But again, society isn't really about fulfillment. It's about you being a good consumer and buying crap. That's what society is about. You working, you paying some taxes and buying stuff. That's really the crux of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love buying crap too. I have a four-wheeler, love riding that. And of course, but that's not our identities. And that's the danger of associating all these things with identity. All the commercials, you're going to slim down if you wear these jeans, you're going to be happy if you drink this soda. Well, none of that is true, right? It's all a facade. And that's the deeper truths we really need to get at, because they won't fulfill you. They can add an essence to life. They can add, a joy to life, of course. I'm not saying living like an austere monk or something like that, but those things that we're told to buy that will give you fulfillment are a lie. They will not give you fulfillment in your deepest soul. They will not heal your hurt from the past.
What I do as a coach is I understand that so well because now we're going off into the world being adults, right? So now we're getting into the real conversation, right? Before it was just the foundation. Now we're getting into people going off thinking that they're going to find happiness in this car, this home. And my first book that I just completed, it's still not out yet, is all about happiness. And the reason why I did that was because we have been fed this belief about happiness, right? This is going to make you happy. And then my second book is going to be about the mindset, about what we should be going on. So it goes in chronological order of what needs to be talked about first. And I think happiness, this is one of those things where society says, well, you want to be skinny, right? You want to look good. You want to be in this nice fancy car, you want to be in this beautiful home, and that might not be what you want. And sometimes people just get into the American dream, per se, let's just call it that, that they have to have that at a minimum base. Otherwise, they're not going to be accepted. And again, we go back to what we talked about early on. We look for that acceptance. And then we finally get to a point in our adulthood life where we say, all right, I'm broken. I need to fix myself. That's what I saw in the schools. I saw people were going down that road, and then we were going to have an issue later on. And I wanted to basically fix all the problems that were never addressed. And as much as I hate to say it, I have a job for life where mindset, personal development, helping people get to their higher selves is going to be forever prominent. And I mean, the quarantine and the lockdowns, that's just enforced. Yes, I have a job for life. This whole business is going to thrive even more so than what it has already have, because people are so damaged already. And we just keep on tacking on more negativity, more propaganda. And we are just saying, hey, society says this, you got to follow what society says. And we don't necessarily, again, look at ourselves and see what we want and then start to live how we want to. What I did when I moved from Connecticut, because I'm from Connecticut originally, was I moved to Texas. That's 1,800 miles away. Why did I move from Connecticut all the way to Texas? I could have went to New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine. I could have went somewhere close to my family. But one of the things that I wanted to do in my head was to put myself on a deserted island, per se, and to start to look at my own mind and say, hey, this is what I would like to have in my life. This is what I would like to create. This is what I would like to build. I left teaching in 2016. I didn't start the business till 2018. 2017 was a year of reflection for me. What was I trying to do? And then the whole idea behind the business came from reading books, seeking mentors, coaches for that year, and then saying, I finally know what I need to do. It wasn't so much teaching in the classroom. It was still education, but educating people beyond the classroom, beyond college, because people are going to have these problems. They're going to seek some type of advice. They're going to seek some type of help, and they don't know where to look necessarily. So they try to fight this fight of life by themselves when there's going to be resources that they can use to help them get to a better life. So that's why I have this business. That's why I have people like yourself who can come on and explain to people like, hey, yes, the past has been crappy. I understand that. But what can we do to start to fix things, right? What can we do to start to remediate or make our life a little bit better? What are those steps? Like, how do those steps look like? Because yes, we can see, we talked about it. Society is telling us this, but we need to also be able to look at, well, what steps could we be taking in order to help us get to the place that we should be rather than where we are today?
Absolutely. And this is really the key for everyone. No one is anyone different. Well, let's start with what we're putting into our minds. We often talk about what we're put onto our bodies, right? You are what you eat. We are what you think also. You are what you feel. And with a lot of the childhood stuff in particular, or things that maybe have gone wrong, we replay those scenarios over and over again. So we're trapped in the past. We're not experiencing the present. We're trapped in the past. The present, that's not happening in the present. But our minds, those triggers, those emotional triggers happen, something externally triggers it, and now we're trapped in the past again, right? It's a deadly cycle. And you can live your whole life like that until you start trying to shift. And that is, what good stuff are you going to put in? Maybe listening to Michael's show, maybe listening to Tony Robbins or David Goggins. There's a million people out there that are inspiring. They go, and once you start putting the good stuff in there, you automatically start feeling better. Well, what happens when you look at the news or social media and all this essentially poison that you're putting in there? All these things that you feel powerless about, or just you feel like injustice has been done. I've actually been getting away from social media because I realized it's just this free for all in there. It's not, oh, I'm looking for X. Well, it's just going to be a billion things coming at you. Someone got murdered. Someone did this. It's just like, it's too much information. It's overload, and a lot of it is very negative. People calling, everyone has an axe to grind, right, on social media. It's almost like people feel powerless. But let me get on social media and give someone a bad review. I'm going to
Mm,
say what I think. Well, that's not helping, right? It doesn't help you heal, and it doesn't help the person. So the first part is, what are we putting into our minds? Who are we associating with? If you're associating with negative people who want to keep you stuck, and believe me, a lot of people want to keep you stuck because they're stuck. They don't want you to move forward because now you're abandoning them, and that triggers their stuff. So you got to be careful who you're associating with, what your environment is. If you're in an environment with an abusive relationship or an abusive whatever, you got to get yourself out of that. You have to, again, so what you're putting into your mind, into your emotions, who you're associating with, and then how are you feeding the good stuff? Because under all that negative stuff is yearning for love. It's yearning for life. It's yearning for human connections. And often when we're hurting, I've suffered from depression on and off for a lot of times in my life. It's because I'm not connecting to people. I'm not connecting to that place in me that needs love. And part of it is I have to give me that love. I have to say, I deserve love here. And I'm going to meet people who are like-minded. I just went to a conference this weekend, a growth mindset conference, and it was incredible. I mean, everyone there is trying to better themselves. Everyone there is trying to help each other. Well, where in life do you get that, Michael? That everyone there is for their best, for your best. And again, society isn't, I'm not blaming society. It's just not the design of it right now. And I think things are changing. And we look often to the government or to whomever, Elon Musk or whomever, it doesn't start there. It starts with us. And so that's what I get back to the civic duty and connecting with people and volunteerism. You can't feel like crap when you're helping people, right? When you've helped people, you automatically start feeling better because that's helping you inside of you. It's helping you heal. So it's the thoughts we think, it's the emotions we feel. And once we start going, oh yeah, I don't want to feel that. Instead of just kind of getting trapped into that, step back a little bit, go, yeah, that's not happening anymore. I don't want to feel this way. And you start trying to let it go. You start trying to heal it. What do you want to feel in there? But when we're living on the autopilot, if you will, or on these kind of just like auto computer, files that just keep repeating themselves, you're never going to change. I don't know if you know who Joe Dispenza is. You probably do, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says, look, if you're trapped in the familiar past, you're going to have a predictable future because nothing is changing. But the time to change is always, and monks and meditators have said this for thousands of years, you meditate in the moment. That's the only thing you can heal. And you get to change everything now by being in the moment. But if you're only trapped in the past, your future is going to pretty much be the same as it's been. So again, it's just healing the thoughts. What are we allowing in? What are we associating with? And my goodness, if we put ourselves in nurturing settings, well, nurturing can happen. And too often the ego doesn't want us to change. The ego wants to be proven right. I don't know if you've noticed, but probably 1,000 times a day, the ego will say, oh, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and this is going to happen. It's always wrong. It's always wrong, trying to predict and control. And that's the scary thing, is when we stop trying to predict and control everything, we can be in the moment. We can be in the sweet spot of our best selves in the moment by doing that.
And I'm with you. I'm not out to bash society. And I don't even think anything we spoke about goes against any ideal of a person, right? We're talking about a different type of mindset. I can tell, like I said, you have an interesting mindset. I told you in the message, I love how you think, right? You have a growth mindset. And it's not so much we should be around like-minded mindsets. We should be around growth-minded mindsets. That's the biggest difference that people have to swap, right? A lot of people think, oh, I should find someone who's similar to me. When you do that, you might find someone who's a narcissist. So now you're hanging around narcissists, or you might be hanging around people who are toxic. So now you're getting that toxicity in your life. Well, why not hang around someone who's positive, who's uplifting, who's nurturing, who's caring? Do that versus the alternate, right? Because that's easy to hang around toxic people and be toxic. It takes work to be around growth minded people and to see your future and then to put the energy towards something more. That takes confidence, that takes courage because change is scary. Many people
Sure.
think that they're just going to have January 1st come and they're just going to follow their New Year's resolutions and they're going to follow through with it. No.
No. So if you're not addressing emotions, the stuff that goes, yeah, I'm going to just go back to eating pizza. I'm not, or all the time. I love pizza, of course. Who doesn't? But it's just we go back to the set points or emotional set points. So if we're not healing those, your brain is not going to override the much more emotional will than your thoughts of, oh, for today, I'm going to do better. You've been doing the other stuff for 40 years.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I think people are just so emotional and they allow their emotions to be their voice. And one of the things that I am forever mindful of, we are in control of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, and the feelings synonymous to emotions. So if I can control those three aspects of my life, I have control of my life, of the way my mind thinks. Now, of course, there's going to be situations where I might want to act and be more emotional. That's fine, right? I'm human. I'm going to go down that path and then adjust where I need to adjust to get back to being mindful, to being aware. That takes quite some time to get to that mindset. It took me years to be mindful, to get rid of the trash that's in our mind that society has given us, that school system has given us, and that
Yeah.
we have told ourselves over the years. We have to take some time, tidy up the space in our mind, and then delegate what are we keeping and what are we getting away from.
Yeah. And it's a scary place because we're leaving and losing the familiar. So if you don't have the familiar self of, oh, but this is who I am, what's underneath that? Who am I without that? And people sometimes say, well, if I get rid of my anger motivates me. What am I left with? What motivation will I have? Well, it's scary because it's an unfamiliar place. But once you get onto the other side of that, you'll start feeling better and you're like, oh, I don't have to have that negative familiarity. I can actually feel good about myself in this space. So it's a weird thing, right? I mean, like you're so accustomed to having, for instance, a broken leg or a wounded knee. You go, oh, I don't always have to have that. But when we start going through life year after year with it, it just becomes familiar. My
Mhm.
leg always hurts.
And this way of thinking, getting to that mindset, it's a journey, and we
Yeah.
have to understand that we're going to go down a path and we might not like it and we might go down a different path. It's kind of like a trial and error type of thing because we are trying to experience life the way that we would like to experience it, and we might not have all the answers right from the start. Now, I will say, if you can get a coach, get a mentor, if you can find a book that can give you some light, it's going to give you some direction. And that is important because if you're walking around aimlessly, it's going to be difficult to get out of that mindset, that forest type of mentality, where in order to figure out how to get out of a forest, you need to first figure out where you are on the map. And then once you understand that aspect, then we can come up with a plan, set a direction, and say, this is how we do it. And having you on today, Douglas, has been a huge wake up call, I'm sure, for many people to help them understand that where they are right now doesn't have to be where they stay. And I'm sure we can continue this conversation for hours and hours and hours because there's just so many different paths that we can go down and talk about because it's more than just this conversation that you and I had today. But
Sure.
if you could, please share any last words. And then, of course, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, this is so important, Michael, for all of us. And I will say this, everyone listening, everyone everywhere has value. And I don't mean value a dollar value. I mean a value to the world, a value to themselves, a value to some stranger that is struggling. We're all unique. We're all one person in this global enterprise of humanity. And it's so important. People need to know who you are. You need to know who you are so you can fulfill your journey. So believe that you are lovable, believe that you are worthwhile, believe that you have value, you have heart, you're worthwhile, and someone loves you. I think this is the most important thing any of us can learn, because if we have that as the foundation. You can be the tree in the wind. You can be flexible. If you don't have that and something happens wrong, then you just go back into your hole, into the shell, into the corner, saying, I don't have value. You do have value, and you got to keep working on that. It's a muscle. You can find me at douglasrobbinsauthor.com. I'd love to connect to anybody. You can get a free one of my stories. Most of my stories about seeking, healing, and the evolution of souls. I have a book called Naracon, The Cloak Deception. It is about the evolution of souls. And it's also about a lot of what we've spoken today, how some people are trying to prevent you from evolving, whereas this other group, the light beings, are trying to help you reach your fulfillment and continue the evolution of souls. So again, everyone has value. And when we're hiding and in pain, the pain blocks that light. It blocks that love. And when you're in a depressed state, there is no love or light, because all you're holding on to, and all I have held on to when in those places, is the doubts, is the darkness. Well, darkness never serves anyone, does not serve our higher purpose. And we have to learn tools on when we get into that place, and we get into that place of not believing, of doubts, switching gears, put something good into your head. Listen to something that makes you laugh. Listen to something that makes you feel good. Listen to something that go, oh yeah, I'm like that guy. And it changes our mindset once again.
Definitely. And the journey of mindset is going to be a forever journey. I encourage everyone to check out Douglas's website, look at some of his books, and to, of course, dive in to see if you can find something that is going to resonate with you. And for me, in my beginning stages of trying to get to that better type of mindset, I read a plethora of books from different authors, and I was able to find nuggets in each of those books. It's going to be a compounding effect where at one point you're going to read a book, and it might be Douglas's, where you read the book and he says, now everything makes sense. So if you are in a dark place right now, and if you're trying to find some light, I encourage you to check him out. And then, of course, reach out to him if you need anything in the future. A huge thank you, Douglas Robbins, for coming on Coaching in Session. It was a huge pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Have a great day.
All right. Cheers.